Let me say something that might annoy a few people right out of the gate. The jobs that make the most long-term money are usually the ones no one brags about online. They're boring, they don't sound impressive at dinner parties, and they definitely don't look sexy on X. But here's the deal, they pay, they stick around, and they're almost always hiring. The reason is simple. Most people are chasing excitement, not leverage. Somewhere along the way, we got sold this idea that your work needs to be exciting, passion-fueled, perfectly aligned with your purpose. And if it's not, apparently you're doing life wrong. Now, that sounds nice, but it's also why so many smart people are stressed, underpaid, and constantly starting over. Here's a truth nobody wants to say out loud. Boring jobs don't disappear. The exciting ones rotate every 12 months. Now, if you're an agency owner, a freelancer, a consultant, or somebody trying to build predictable income without burning out, this matters more than ever. Because here in 2026, stability is the new flex. Not hustle, not vibes, not I'm building in public. It's predictable systems, predictable demand, and predictable pay. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 8 boring but high-paying remote jobs that are always hiring, low competition, ignored by the influencers, and quietly paying people very, very well. These aren't theory jobs. These are roles company cannot afford to leave unfilled. And here's the most important part that videos tend to miss. Once you understand why these jobs exist, you can either get hired for them, productize them, or build systems around them. That's where the real leverage is. Now, before we jump into that list though, we need to talk about why boring jobs are actually the safest jobs in the age of AI. Because once you see that pattern, every role on this list will make a lot more sense. Let's break that down next. Right now, everyone's asking the same question. Is AI gonna take my job? And the honest answer is, it depends on what your job actually does. If your work is flashy, trend-based, purely creative without accountability, or built on surface level execution, that's a risk. But the jobs I'm about to show you, they live in a completely different category. Here's what real businesses pay for: reduced risk, fewer mistakes, cleaner handoffs, better follow-up, predictable outcomes. None of that is exciting, but here's the deal. It's mission critical. Most companies don't fail because they lack ideas. They fail because things fall through the cracks, and boring jobs exist to plug those cracks. This is the most important part that many people miss. AI is incredible at generating ideas, speeding up tasks, summarizing information, but it's terrible at owning outcomes, understanding nuances, being accountable when something breaks. And companies don't pay for tools, they pay for ownership. That's why boring jobs don't get replaced by AI. They get augmented by it. Let me give you an example. Imagine a company doing $5 million a year. They don't care if their internal systems are cool. They care that leads don't get lost, customers don't churn, compliance issues don't pop up, reviews don't go unanswered, data doesn't get misinterpreted. Every one of those problems costs real money. So when someone comes in and quietly says, I'll make sure this never breaks again, that person becomes invaluable. Even if their job title sounds boring. Here's the pattern you'll start noticing as we go through the list. These jobs usually sit behind the scenes, touch revenue indirectly but powerfully, have high switching costs, and create compounding value over time, which is why companies hate losing people in these roles and why they're constantly hiring replacements. If you run an agency or freelance right now, this should feel familiar. Most of your stress probably doesn't come from the work itself. It comes from follow-up, operations, client slipping, systems breaking, things not being documented. That's not a motivation problem, that's an operations problem. And operations is where boring jobs live. Before I start listing off job titles, I want you to slow this down for a second, because if you just hear a list of jobs, you'll miss the real value in this video. The job titles themselves matter way less than why these roles exist. So here's a filter that I used. Every job on this list checks at least 3 of the 4 boxes. First, it's boring by design, meaning it's not built for ego. There's no personal brand attached to it. No one's flexing about it on LinkedIn. Second, it's close to revenue or risk. It either protects money, unlocks money, or prevents expensive mistakes. Third, it's AI assisted, not AI replaced. AI makes the person in this role faster and more valuable, but it doesn't remove the need for ownership. And fourth, it has high switching costs. Once a company hires somebody into this role, they don't really want to lose them. That last one is huge. High switching costs means onboarding takes time. Context matters. Mistakes become expensive, which is why companies do not treat these roles casually. Now, here's the interesting part. Most people think high-paying jobs come from being exceptional. In reality, they come from being reliable in places where failure is expensive. And that's why all of these jobs have that in common. They sit in the gaps between marketing and sales, between systems and people, between data and decisions, or between customers and churn. They're not glamorous, but they're critical. And once you understand this filter, something kind of wild happens. You stop asking, what job should I get? And you start asking, what problems do businesses quietly panic about but never post online? That's exactly where these roles live. And that's why they're almost always hiring, because founders don't wake up excited to hire people for these positions. They wake up stressed when they don't have them filled. With that filter in mind, let's go into the list and I'll walk through each role the same way. What it actually is, why companies need it, how much it pays, and who it's a good fit for. Starting with the first one, and this role is a role almost nobody plans for, but every growing company eventually needs. Revenue operations, or RevOps. Sounds complicated, it's not. In plain English, this person makes sure marketing, sales, and delivery don't step on each other. That's it. They're the connective tissue between leads coming in, deals getting closed, and customers actually getting results. When this role doesn't exist, here's what happens. Marketing goes and blames sales. Sales blames the lead quality. Delivery blames onboarding. And revenue quietly leaks out the sides. A RevOps manager's job is to stop that from happening. They clean up CRMs. They fix broken handoffs. They standardize pipelines. They make sure nothing important falls through the cracks, which is exactly why companies pay very well for this role. Remote RevOps salaries typically land anywhere between $100,000 and $180,000, depending on experience and scope. And here's why this job is always hiring. Founders don't wake up thinking, wow, I'd love to redesign our CRM tomorrow. They only think about it when things break. Missed follow-ups, bad forecasting, confusing data, lost deals. By the time they're hiring for RevOps, the pain is already there. Now, let's talk AI for a second. AI doesn't replace this role. It supercharges it. CRMs get smarter, reporting gets faster, forecasting improves, but someone still has to own the system. Someone still has to decide what matters, what doesn't matter, and what actually moves the needle for revenue. This role is perfect for agency owners who already manage pipelines, freelancers who live inside of CRMs, operators who like systems more than Spotlight. Opportunity score on this one, a solid 9 out of 10. And we're just getting started. Job number 2, customer success manager. Customer success is one of those roles that sounds friendly, but is actually very serious business, because this person sits in charge of one thing companies obsess over: retention. A customer success manager, or CSM, makes sure customers actually use what they paid for, don't quietly disappear, and don't churn 6 months later. When this role doesn't exist, companies tend to feel it fast. Customers stop logging in, support tickets can pile up, renewals get awkward, and leadership suddenly realizes growth is leaking out the back door. That's why this role pays. Remote CSM salaries typically range from $90,000 to $150,000, sometimes higher in B2B SaaS or agency environments. And here's why it's always hiring. Acquisition gets all the attention, but retention is where profit lives. Companies can't afford to lose customers they already paid to acquire. Now, here's a part that makes this a boring but powerful job. Most of the work is follow-up, communication, processes, and expectation management. No hype, no flashy campaigns, just making sure people don't fall through the cracks. And again, AI plays a role here, but it doesn't replace the human. AI can summarize usage, flag risk, suggest responses, but it can't build trust, read between the lines, handle nuance when a customer is just frustrated. That's where the CSM becomes indispensable. This role is a great fit for people who are calm under pressure, who can communicate clearly, like solving quiet problems before they explode. The opportunity score on this one, 8.5 out of 10. And if you've ever run an agency, you've already done parts of this job, whether you realized it or not. Job number 3, technical project manager. A technical project manager isn't there to write code. They're there to make sure the people who do write code don't accidentally destroy timelines, budgets, or expectations. This role exists because miscommunication is expensive. Developers speak one language. Clients and leadership speak another. The technical project manager translates between the two of them. They manage timelines, the scope of work, overall priorities, and dependencies. They do it calmly, repeatedly, and with extreme attention to detail. Remote salaries for this role typically land between $110,000 and $160,000, sometimes more. And here's why companies always hire for it. Because without this role, projects drag on, deadlines slip, costs balloon, and everyone blames everybody else. A good technical PM prevents chaos before it starts. This job is boring because it's meetings, documentation, coordinating, follow-ups. But boring is exactly what keeps projects profitable. AI helps here too. It can summarize meetings, track overall progress, flag risks early, but again, someone has to own the outcome. Somebody has to decide what gets shipped, what gets delayed, and what is non-negotiable for the company. This role is perfect for organized thinkers, people who like structure, operators who prefer clarity over creativity. Opportunity score, 8 out of 10. Job number 4, Lifecycle Marketing Manager. This is one of the most misunderstood roles in modern business because when people hear marketing, they think ads. That's not this. A Lifecycle Marketing Manager owns what happens after someone raises their hand, after the lead comes in, after the sale closes, after onboarding starts. This role controls follow-up, retention, expansion, and reactivation, which means they quietly control a massive chunk of revenue. Remote salaries for lifecycle marketers usually fall between $100,000 and $170,000, depending on scope and experience. And here's why this job is always hiring. Most companies are great at getting attention and terrible at what happens next. Leads go cold. Customers forget why they signed up. Opportunities die quietly in inboxes. A lifecycle marketer fixes that. They design systems that make sure the right message goes out at the right time to the right person. This job is boring because it's logic, sequencing, testing, iterations, and no flashy launches or viral comments. Just constant execution. AI plays a massive role here. It can personalize messaging, segment audiences, optimize timing, draft content faster. But again, tools don't replace ownership. Someone still has to decide what gets sent, why it matters, and what outcome you're optimizing for. This role is a perfect fit for agency owners who already run email and SMS, operators who think in systems, people who like leverage more than spotlight. Opportunity score, 9 out of 10. Job number 5, data attribution analyst. Every company says they're data driven. Most of them are just guessing. A data attribution analyst exists to answer one brutal question: what's actually working? This role sits between marketing spend, revenue outcomes, and executive decisions. Remote salaries here range from $120,000 to $200,000, sometimes more at larger companies. And here's why it's always hiring: because bad decisions are expensive. Wrong attribution means cutting the wrong channel, scaling the wrong campaign, blaming the wrong team, and a good analyst saves companies from lighting money on fire. This job is boring because it's just dashboards, cleanup, validation, and explanation. You spend more time fixing data than celebrating it. But boring is exactly what leadership wants here. AI helps a lot. It can detect anomalies, surface patterns, and automate reporting, but it still can't answer the most important question. So what? That interpretation, that judgment is where the human stays. This role is perfect for analytical thinkers, people who hate fluff, operators who like truth over storytelling. Opportunity score, 8.5 out of 10. Job number 6, compliance and risk operations. No one wakes up excited to hire for compliance. They hire for it when they're scared. Compliance and risk operations exist to keep companies out of lawsuits, fines, and regulatory disasters. And in 2026, with AI, finance, and healthcare tightening regulations, this role is exploding. Remote salaries often range from $130,000 to $220,000, depending on industry and responsibility. Here's why it's always hiring. Regulations change constantly. Penalties are massive. Mistakes are public and permanent. This role is boring because it's documentations, audits, checklists, policies, but boring is exactly what keeps companies alive. AI helps by scanning documents, flagging risks, monitoring changes, but it can't replace accountability. When something goes wrong, a tool doesn't make the call, a person does. This role fits people who like structure, think defensively, prefer prevention over reaction. Opportunity score, 9 out of 10. Job number 7, SEO and reputation operations lead. This one needs a quick clarification. This is not the flashy SEO guru. role that you see online. This is operations. An SEO and reputations operation lead is responsible for making sure a company shows up when people search, looks trustworthy when they do, and doesn't quietly lose customers to competitors with better visibility. This role lives in the unsexy parts of SEO: technical cleanup, consistency, review velocity, on-page hygiene, monitoring, and response, which is exactly why it works. Remote salaries for this role land usually between 90 to 160,000 depending on scope. And here's why it's always hiring. SEO is slow, reputation compounds, and mistakes linger. Companies can't afford to set it and forget it. They need somebody watching rankings, reviews, site health, local visibility every week, every month. This job is boring because results take time. Wins are not instant. Progress is incremental, but boring is also what makes it defensible. AI helps here a lot. It can surface issues, suggest optimizations, speed up responses, but someone still has to decide what matters, maintain consistency, and protect the brand long term. This role is especially powerful for people who already work with local businesses, run agencies, or understand how trust converts. Opportunity score, 8.5 out of 10. Job number 8, internal automation and AI systems manager. This role didn't exist in most companies 5 years ago. Now it's becoming essential. An internal automation or AI systems manager is responsible for one thing: making sure the company does more with less effort. They identify repetitive processes and replace them with automations, workflows, internal tools. This role isn't about building flashy AI products. It's about eliminating friction. Remote salaries here range from 120 to 250,000, depending on impact. And here's why this job is exploding right now. Every company feels the pressure to use AI. Very few know how to do it safely, consistently, or usefully. Most tools get bought and then abandoned. This role makes sure that doesn't happen. This job is boring because it's process mapping, iterations, testing, internal training, no public praise, no viral moments, just efficiency. AI obviously plays a central role here. But again, tools don't manage themselves. Someone has to decide what gets automated, what will then stay human, and what actually saves time. This role is perfect for operators, system thinkers, agency owners just tired of reinventing wheels. The opportunity score, 9.5 out of 10. And now that you've seen all 8, here's something important we need to zoom out and talk about, because the jobs themselves aren't the real takeaway. The pattern here is every job on this list does the same thing. It quietly prevents chaos. They don't create attention, they create stability. They sit behind the scenes, making sure that money doesn't leak, customers don't disappear, systems don't break, and trust doesn't erode. That's why they pay so well. Companies don't reward excitement. They reward relief. Relief that things are handled. Nothing is on fire. And someone responsible owns the outcome. Once you see this pattern, your thinking changes. You stop chasing what's hot and you start building leverage where it compounds. Here's a final thought I want to leave you with. The internet celebrates visibility, but businesses pay for reliability. That's why boring jobs quietly win. And it's the same principle behind the systems I build today. Not flashy, not loud, just consistent trust compounded over time. If this way of thinking resonates, systems over hype, leverage over hustle, That's exactly what we work on inside of my Skool community. It's where operators, agency owners, and freelancers learn how to apply AI practically, build boring systems that scale, and create predictable income without the burnout. Links below if you want to check it out. And if this video helped reframe how you think about work, hit subscribe, because boring done right is incredibly profitable. And I'll see you in the next one.